21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
My story starts back in the mid-1980s when I worked for a company called IBM, and I worked on a product called the PC Junior, which was IBM's entree into the home computer market. It was going to change the way home computing worked. And we spent a good 2 years getting everything ready, setting up manufacturing plants, getting the products in inventory. And the big day came. And unfortunately, the very next day, the headlines in the Wall Street Journal read, "The PC Junior is a flop." And unfortunately, it was. They were right. It took us about a year to come to grips with that fact. And I thought, how did they know so quickly that it was a flop? I mean, it just came out yesterday, and today it's a flop, and they're right. And it occurred to me that they were using some set of metrics to judge the value of the product. You know, it wasn't meeting up to somebody's standards. And I thought, well, could we know what those metrics are well in advance in the product development cycle so we don't make mistakes and come up with products like the PC Junior? You know, as I started looking into it, I quickly realized that it's not just IBM that had that problem. All companies have that problem. And it wasn't just back then. 33 years later, it's still happening today. This got me very interested in innovation as a process. You know, so I could work with companies like IBM that had resources and people and ideas, and instead of having them create failed products, let's help them create products that they know are going to win in the market before they start developing them, not find out the day after it's introduced. Hi, my name's Tony Ulwick. After my IBM debacle that I endured, I began working as an internal IBM consultant, trying to figure out better ways to innovate. And I started coming up with some new ideas, and I took them on the road, so to speak, in my own business back in 1991 when I started a consultancy called Stratagen. And for the first 10 years or so, I really worked pretty much on my own, or just with a small number of people, helping companies change the way they innovate. And I did manage to pick up a number of good-sized clients and really work to fine-tune the process to see if it could work across multiple industries and so on. And in 1999, after reading Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma, I thought, God, the approach I have here, I think it really fixes this innovation dilemma issue. So I called Clay, and he invited me to his office. He was very kind, open, warm, and I introduced the concept to him, which he liked, and he introduced it in his book, The Innovator Solution, in 2003. And from that moment on, it really boosted my career. It boosted my company, and kind of sent it into a really strong growth direction. So since that time frame, for 20 years now, I've been managing Stratagen. I'm the founder, the CEO, but at heart, I'm really a practitioner. I love doing the actual work and continue to participate in projects even today. Along my journey, I developed a new approach to innovation. And it occurred to me one day, I'll just give you a little more background on me. I started at IBM as a manufacturing engineer, so I worked on manufacturing lines and appreciated the idea of automation and statistical process control to remove variation and Six Sigma to reduce defects. So I had that mindset. And I crossed that with a quote I heard hundreds of times, comes from a 1962 article, I believe, in Harvard Business Review, uh, where Levitt says, people don't want a quarter inch drill. People don't want a quarter inch drill. They want a quarter inch hole. And I thought, well, that makes sense. And I had read that hundreds of times. And it finally occurred to me, instead of focusing on drills and creating better drills, why don't we go study the process that people are trying to execute? They're trying to create a quarter inch hole. They don't care if it's a drill or what solution, right? They just want something that will get that job done effectively for them. Now, I went to the metrics. I said, oh, this is how it's going to work, right? If you can think about the underlying process they're executing and studying that, it's like a manufacturing process. You can get it done faster. You can get it done more predictably. You can get it done more effectively with no defects, whether it's making a cup of coffee or performing a surgical procedure. It's a process. All the same rules apply. This got me very excited, and it was the start of the process where we could say, hey, people buy products to get a job done. And a job can really be anything a group of people are trying to accomplish. Now, once you know what that job is, you can figure out what steps they're going through to get that job done. Created what I call a job map. And once I have the job map, I can go a step lower to figure out how do people measure success along each step of the way? How do they get the job done faster, more predictably, better results? And these metrics I call outcomes. So for example, we all have outcomes for every job that we do. They may not be top of mind, but we recognize them when we hear them. So for example, you may be trying to prepare a meal for consumption, and you'd say, what denotes success? Well, I want to minimize the likelihood of overcooking the meal because if I overcook it, that's bad. That's a variation I'm trying to eliminate from the process. I want to minimize the time it takes to set up the portions. I want to minimize the likelihood that the food cooks unevenly. I could go on, right? There's a whole bunch of metrics that you have in your head that say, hey, this is going great or this is going poorly. And the thought was, if we can extract all those metrics from customers, we can figure out what their needs are. It's a new way to define customer needs. And if we can help them get their jobs done better, they'll buy our products because after all, people buy products to get jobs done. So if I know what the job is, I know at a very granular level how they measure success. I can then predictably figure out where they're most underserved, create products that they want, products that get the job done significantly better. That's it in a nutshell. You know, all the work that goes into making that happen, of course, is another story. One of the first times I used the model outside of IBM was with Cordis Corporation. They made angioplasty balloons. They were competing with a couple other big players in the space, and their market share was down to 1%. And they were desperate to come up with a new product line that would propel them back into the lead, which they lost over a period of years. So I worked with them. It's one of my very first projects, like I said, and I interviewed the interventional cardiologist, but not about creating a better angioplasty balloon. I, I talked about the job they're trying to get done, which is to restore blood flow to the artery. And then we went down and created a job map, broke down all the steps associated with it, and then figured out how do they measure success along each step of the way. So these are interventional cardiologists who perform this procedure hundreds of times. They know it like the back of their hand. And when you talk about what they're measuring each step of the way, they can tell you. They can say, "Hey, I want to minimize the likelihood of inadvertently going past the lesion when I'm trying to open the artery, or I want to minimize the likelihood of, of negatively or of I want to minimize the likelihood of damaging the side vessel as I'm going through a tortuous path. I want to minimize the time it takes to set the balloon at the lesion. I want to minimize the time it takes to open up the artery. I want to minimize the time it takes to verify that the plaque has been removed, and so on. I mean, 100 different metrics that they use to describe very, at a very, very granular level, how they measure success on each step of the way. So I had that list of statements, then I put them in a survey and sent them out to 180 interventional cardiologists and asked them to tell me how important each outcome was and the current level of satisfaction. And from that information, I could figure out which needs were most important and least satisfied for them. There were about 15 of them that hit the top of the list. So I brought them into an ideation session with the Cordis team, and over a 2-day period, we conceptualized a new line of angioplasty balloon products that address those top 15 unmet needs. So fast forward a year and a half, they introduced that product line, and they introduced 19 products. All of them became number one or two in the marketplace. Their market share went from 1% to over 20%. What was also interesting about this is there was one unmet need that was really off the chart, very high opportunity score, and that was reduced, I'm sorry, that was minimize the likelihood of restenosis, which is the recurrence of the blockage. They said, well, we're working on a device that does exactly that, along with 40 other things. And we said, maybe you should prioritize that first, because that's going to be a home run. That product turned out to be the heart stent. It was number one. It was the fastest growing medical device product in history. And that propelled their stock from about $16 a share to $108 a share. They were acquired by Johnson & Johnson, and they lived happily ever after. To be successful at using this approach, it really requires a unique mindset. We're talking about things through the lens of the hole maker, not the drill maker. Again, it's all about creating a better quarter-inch hole. And so when we think about a market, we're not going to define a market around the product or a technology or a vertical or a use case. We're going to define a market as a group of people in the job they're trying to get done. Parents who are trying to pass on life lessons to children. That's a market. Interventional cardiologists trying to restore blood flow to an artery. That's a market. That's a different mindset. Now you're thinking about a market as a process that customers are trying to execute or a job they're trying to get done. Next, we're going to look at customer needs. And needs aren't going to be defined as exciters and delighters and specs and requirements or value drivers and pains and gains. And I could throw out 40 more words that companies use to talk about needs. Needs become the measurable outcomes that customers are trying to achieve when getting the job done, like minimizing the likelihood of overcooking the meal in the case of prepping a meal, or minimizing the likelihood of impacting a side artery when you go in towards a lesion. Very specific measurable outcomes. And then when we talk about unmet needs, we're not talking about features that are missing from products. We're talking about outcomes that are very important and not well satisfied. When we talk about customer segments, we're not going to talk about segmenting around demographics and psychographics, attitudes, and behaviors, we're going to segment around unmet needs. And most companies can't do that because they don't agree on what a need is or what the needs are, which needs are unmet, which forces them to use proxies when coming up with their uh, segmentation scheme, which often leads to failure because they're pointing at phantom targets. Now, once you have these pieces of information, you know your market, you know the needs, which are unmet. If there's segments of people with different unmet needs, this is like marketing 101, but through the lens of the homemaker, not the drill maker. And now you're ready to come back into solution space. You know, with that information, you can figure out those top 15 unmet needs in your market and work handily to try to solve them. And the question I love asking is, what are the chances that your product will randomly address the top 15 unmet needs in the market if you don't know what those needs are? And the answer is pretty much zero. But what happens when you know exactly what they are and you put the best minds on solving them? Well, the answer is about 86% because that's the success rate of the outcome-driven innovation process. It's for the very reason I just described. Instead of brainstorming solutions and hope they address the top 15 unmet needs, we're going to uncover the top 15 unmet needs and systematically create solutions we know will address them before we start developing the product. So we don't spend 2 years developing the IBM PC Junior only to find out the very next day that it's a failed product. So over the years, we've fine-tuned our offering to address the key issues that face companies who struggle with innovation. And it's really a two-pronged issue. One is we have to get people in the right direction. They have to be focused on the top 15 unmet needs. The second is they have to be focused in the same direction. Having a group of people paddling in different directions just sends the boat around in circles, right? What we need to know is we need to know the right direction and we have to align our organization and point in that direction. So everyone agrees on what a need is and what the needs are, which needs are unmet, what's the best solution. And everyone's on board paddling in the same direction. So our offering comes in three components. The first is all the research that needs to be done to define the market, the needs, the unmet needs, the segments, figure out where the key areas of opportunity are. That points the team in the right direction. Then we have an educational component, a project cohort that we execute in conjunction with the project so that their teams can go along on the journey and understand the implication of defining a market a certain way, needs a certain way, the opportunity, so that they're ready to use the data when it comes out of the field. The third piece is working together with the team, the educated, trained team, on conceptualizing the next breakthrough solutions. So we'll take them through the ideation sessions that bring it all together so that they're effectively solving their top 15 unmet needs. Over the past 3 years, we've developed an online certification course that helps entrepreneurs understand uh, the details behind executing the ODI process. A lot of entrepreneurs don't have the time or the budget to hire consulting firms. They want to figure out ways to do it themselves. So the ODI Pro course is designed exactly for that. If you put in the time and effort to read through it, you can develop the right mindset. You can understand uh, how the process works, how to make it work in your situation, and apply some of these principles so that you can be successful in your endeavors and not be one of those 9 out of 10 that fail in the marketplace, but be one of those one or two that succeed in the marketplace. If you want to access this course, you can just Google ODI Pro and it will be top on the list. If you want to learn more about outcome-driven innovation, you can come to our website at strategist.com. It's filled with resources, articles, white papers. You can get a free book on the topic at jobstobedonebook.com. All hyphens in between the words. There's a free audiobook and a free ebook.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.